Okay, welcome to our webinar, How to Become a Wickedly Effective Talent Developer with Action Learning. And we'll show you how Action Learning boosts personal and organizational talent development. And this is a free webinar for everybody who wants to know more about how Action Learning works in this context. Let's get started. We're very excited to have you with us. And here you see a quick introduction from George and myself. I'm Richard de Laat on the right-hand side. George is on the left-hand side. And George, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, certainly. Hi there. I'm George Bolden, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. I run a small consultancy business called Action Learning Associates International, ALA for short, based in the United Kingdom, which I formed in 1980 with Professor Reg Revens, the founder of Action Learning, and my colleague Alan Lorna. The main reason for setting up ALA was to encourage the use of Action Learning in management and organizational development, and we have spent the last 35 years doing just that. My goal here tonight and for the sessions to come is to share this experience with you and to enable you to assess whether Action Learning can be helpful to you. I hope that it can.
Well, and I think from your experience, you know that it can, George.
Well, it's certainly been an experience to our clients, that's for sure.
Yeah. So my name is Richard de Laat. I'm an organizational change management expert. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 20 years in a range of roles, from very technical to very, I would say, in the training area, in the development of people, in leadership development, and the last 8 years in an organizational change management expert role, helping parts of the organization go through big changes globally. And in one of these jobs, I got to know George, who helped us with setting up an Action Learning program to develop 250 leaders with George. So George has been helping us in that program to get people to the next level in their development. I'm also the founder of Cyber Technologies GmbH, which is focused on helping individuals and organizations change for success, which is what our slogan is. And yeah, we're both so convinced that the benefits of Action Learning are useful in a broad range of contexts that we wanted to share that with you, and that's what we're going to do today, and we're very excited about having you with us. What we will cover in this session, and as we've said, look at the holistic nature of Action Learning. Secondly, we're going to look at the 4 simple components of Action Learning. It seems to be simple, but it's an interesting context that you're working with Action Learning. And then the 5 key steps of an Action Learning program. Together, it's a good overview on how to get started with Action Learning in any context. So what our goal is to create that understanding, how you can use it for talent development as well. And then to know what it takes to start your own programs. And at the end, we want to share a great offer with you, which is a logical next step for people who are on this webinar. It's going to be an exciting offer, talking deeper and more about Action Learning and getting really you the resources that you need to get going with Action Learning. So let's get started. George, do you want to pick it up?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Action Learning is a methodology for training managers. It was the brainchild of Professor Reg Revens and is based on his 3 core beliefs. That learning is the key to successful development, not teaching. That learning takes place when we question our program knowledge and behavior, L equals P plus Q, and that practicing managers, comrades in adversity as he called them, learn best with and from each other. So let's have a look at these beliefs in more detail. Belief 1, learning v teaching. Teaching is a push process. Learning is a pull process. You want to teach me, I want to learn. So they're different. And from Revens' point of view, teaching managers about things like finance and human behavior and all of this was good stuff. But at the end of the day, they needed to learn how to manage. And his view was that we need to apply the technology which we've always applied really to the practical development of people, which is a learning model. In a learning model, somebody, it could be some specialist, let's take an apprenticeship, the tutor in an apprenticeship situation shows the apprentice how to file a piece of metal, how to drill it, how to cut it. The apprentice then does this drilling, cutting, filing, and the tutor looks on and puts them right. So this is a process which has always existed in the practical world of doing things. And from Reggie's perspective, management is a practical thing in a practical world, and therefore it is most efficient to apply this concept to the management model. So the learning cycle really is very simple. It says we have an idea, we test the idea, we reflect on the idea, and we learn from the reflection. So Reggie's idea was that we could train managers by getting them to make a proposal about something, to test that in practice by trying it out, to reflect on how well or otherwise it went, and then to learn from that. So the process is action, reflection, learning, and what we're doing is we're learning from experience. That does not mean that theory is irrelevant. As Marx said, theory without practice is sterile, and practice without theory is blind. So yes, we need to be taught some things, but we also need learning in order to be effective.
Thanks. And then belief number 2.
Belief 2. L equals P plus Q. Reg believed that what we are programmed with in childhood really determined our views on the world for the rest of our lives. And therefore it was essential, because the world changes and our programming takes place in our early years, that we question our programming model to see if what we believe is relevant. So Reggie's fundamental belief was that our ability and our ability to change and become more effective is based on our willingness as individuals and organizations, of course, to question the appropriateness of our program behavior. And our program behavior is made up of knowledge, skills, experience, and behavior. So the things that we know, the skills that we have, the experience that we have, and the way we behave, these things need to be combined together in order to achieve competence. So action learning is achieved by using the stimulus of real-life problems with the support of like-minded people, the challenge provided by the facilitator, and the courage to reflect on and learn from the action. Reverend's third belief was that sharing with comrades in adversity was key to learning. That people who are working together to solve similar problems create the best conditions for learning. An environment where ideas and experience are exchanged is essential to seeing how other people do things. Openness is the key. We must be open with how we feel and what we're achieving and what we're failing to achieve. And as part of this process, when I say I will do something, the fact that I say it in front of my colleagues, my comrades in adversity, means that I have a reason to change, a reason to actually make this happen, because when I come back next time for the meeting, then I shall look foolish in front of my friends if I haven't done it. So the action learning model provides this learning environment together with the support of the comrades in adversity and the fact that I've committed myself in front of my friends, and fear of looking a fool pressurizes me to do it.
I find it very interesting, George, that through talking through these beliefs, we already start to get a feeling for what are all the components that you need in an action learning environment. So let's look what else we have.
Right. So we will look at Reggie's experience. Like most people who present ideas which are in conflict with the establishment, it takes time. And it took Reg something like 25 years from his first programs, which he ran in 1947, both inside academia, to get people to recognize that his ideas had value. The traditional environment was interested in education, in actually teaching people, because it was simple. You would take a professor of, let's say, finance, and he could teach finance, and you've got something concrete that you could charge people for, you could test afterwards, and you could give them a diploma. The idea that people could actually learn with and from each other not only has no value from the academic point of view, but of course it has no financial value either, because it's very difficult to charge for when people are actually managing their own learning. So over the years, he did get some support. A number of people experimented with his ideas and added to the methodology. But it was 1974 really before Reg had the opportunity to run his first action learning programs with a large UK company, and that the methodology of action learning as we know it today became clear.
Very good.
So what is action learning? It's a process which empowers people to learn through experience. Very simple. As we said earlier, we all have experiences. We all have ideas, we all have experiences, but we don't all reflect. And even when we do reflect, we don't always learn. So it's a very simple idea. However, it has a lot of layers of complexity, because we are challenging people's basic values and their beliefs, and this is a very difficult area. There are 4 components in an action learning program: the type of program, the process, the structure, and the learning environment, how the set works. So we start with the program type. There are 2 types of program: personal development programs and organizational development, or what we call implant programs. If you look at the slide, you can see that on the top of the slide we have the task, what people do, and we have 2 states, familiar and unfamiliar. And down the left-hand side we have the environment in which people do the task, and we have again the familiar, unfamiliar environment. So there are 4 groups of personal development programs, and we'll start with the far right-hand bottom corner, the Belgian model. The Belgian model is unfamiliar and unfamiliar. The Belgian program, which was an inter-university program launched in 1965, which Reg participated in, where people were taken from organizations to work in other organizations in other positions. So the man from the oil industry who was doing sales and marketing could finish up in the bank worrying about loans for underprivileged people. And the finance director of Company X could finish up as a production manager in Company Y. This was a very expensive program, very high profile program, and a very successful program in the sense that it gave the participants an enormous opportunity to learn in different environments. If we go then to the left, the National Coal Board model, in this model managers of collieries were exchanged. So they were still managing collieries, but they were unfamiliar collieries to them. And the basic idea was they would learn about how other people managed the same situation as they managed. And this was also a very valuable program in the sense that it gave people the opportunity to see things in different ways. Let's take next what is called the GEC model, which was a familiar environment because all of the participants came from GEC. But GEC in those days was a large company, 100,000 people worldwide, and there were 22 people who participated from different parts of the group. So they all did unfamiliar jobs. So they were all in a situation where they were working on something that they were not familiar with, but they were in a familiar environment in the sense that they were still in GEC. Again, high-profile program, big opportunity for the people, and a great experience. Finally, we have what's called the own job model, which is familiar. This is where people take programs within their own job. Therefore, they are familiar with the environment and they are familiar with the job that they do. And the focus of the program is to develop them through a project which extends them within their existing organization. All four have value. All four achieve different things. However, if we look at the three I mentioned first, Belgium, the National Coal Model, and the GEC, these are high-profile programs. They're expensive. We're talking about 6 or 8 months, in most cases off the job, well, in all cases off the job. And one of the problems with these programs is that there can be a difficulty with re-entry. So if a manager in GEC, for example, seconds somebody to the program for 8 months, then it is possible that 8 months later they're looking for a job for this person because somebody else has filled that job. So if you do get an opportunity to do something like this, it would be marvelous and I would take it. But really, from a practical point of view, the own job model is the most realistic, and it is the most popular. If you look today, particularly in the public sector, where most of the action learning programs are running, then own job is the main program in use. So now we move on to organizational change programs. Now, organizational change programs did not exist in 1974. They were developed by ALA International, our company, and really designed to solve the re-entry problems associated with the personal development programs, but also with management training. I was involved in management training at this time, and we also had problems where we were developing managers to become more effective, really through developing a more participative approach. And this was often at odds with the organizations that were sponsoring them. Most organizations at that time tended to have a command and control culture. And when the people came back from our training programs, which were focusing on a more participative, involving style of management, the sponsors were often unhappy. As the slide says, developing people in isolation from their environment often creates more problems than it solves, and this we found to be true. So we developed this implant program as a way of involving everybody who would be affected by some organizational change in finding and implementing the best fit solutions. So ensuring that the solution was in line with the organization's culture, or if not, either changing the solution or changing the culture. So these programs are different in the sense that they are not only looking at the development of people, they are looking at the relationship between the development of people and the organization's culture. They also provide an effective development opportunity for large numbers of people. So it's easy to have 100 people in one of these programs. So all of them are going through 2 processes or 3 processes at the same time. They're actually working on a project, they are helping to change the organization, and they are developing themselves. And the inherent empowerment of these people is great for boosting morale. And as we have found over the years, the involvement of people in the process engenders ownership, which leads to commitment. So
I have a
now
question.
we look at, yes,
George,
Richard.
talking from the perspective of organizational change management, you say, we're the traditional styles of management, and at the same time, I haven't seen too many programs in change where people would kind of hand over, or management would hand over the change of the organization in the hands of their, I would say, subordinates, the people that work for them.
Yes.
And
well, this is a very interesting question, because the whole concept of this implant idea, this organization change program, is that they will do that. So when you negotiate a program of this type, it is absolutely crucial to, first of all, to ensure the management, to explain to the management team what this means. That you say you want to introduce XYZ into your organization, and if you're going to do it this way, we can guarantee that it will work. It will fit, everything will go well. However, it may not work exactly in the way you want it to. It may not be exactly what you want, because the people at large, and it will involve everybody, will change it. And therefore you must be prepared to accept that. Some years ago I ran a program where the management team agreed to run this program. It ran over nearly 2 years because it was a big change. And it was only the fact that the managing director really believed in it that it survived. We lost the production director and the sales director because neither of them liked the change. And I've other examples where we have lost people at senior management level because they were not prepared to accept the change. So this is a very powerful process. So selling to the management team and being absolutely clear with the management team what impact this has is absolutely crucial. And you definitely need a champion.
So it's definitely also a matter of, do they trust the knowledge of the team or the wisdom of the team, right?
Well, do they trust their employees? Yes, this is true. But the employees actually know more about the job than they do, so they should, shouldn't they?
Yeah, technically true. But,
no, practically true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily the truth as seen by these people, but it's true.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move.
So, organizational change programs. Focus on one organization that needs change. Managements decide what they would like to do. A representative cross-section of employees are chosen to work the project. It's very important that everybody in the organization is involved. So you need meetings, you need communication, and then you need to select a representative cross-section. That means that everybody knows somebody or knows about somebody who's involved in this process. So that the communication the informal communication is complete. Then individuals choose a project that they would like to work on. So management present the projects, individuals choose. So I would like to work on, for example, a project about cost reduction. So I choose that. And the sets are formed in this way. The sets then evaluate the project and produce proposals for implementation. So they don't just take what management would like, they then look at that and say, does it fit? Is it best practice? When we look outside our organization, what are other people doing? We may be talking about something which is a halfway house for what one of our competitors is already doing. So why do we stop at halfway? Why don't we go all the way? And then produce a proposal for implementation. Management then reviews that, and the sets then implement the proposals, which are accepted. So it's a total involvement process, and the sets in this type of model are self-managed and self-facilitating. Why and how? How, first of all, we train them. Why? Because they are people working within the organization from different parts of the organization, and they need to be able to meet as and when they want to. So they need to be able to manage themselves and facilitate themselves. And we use external facilitators to join the sets from time to time. So somebody's on site for a day, there are 3 or 4 sets meeting, so they find ways of actually doing this. So the external process is more informal, and it works. It definitely works. But
George, question. The term set keeps coming back, and people have questions about what's a set actually.
The set is I suppose it's the terminology that has come out of the action learning philosophy for the group that learns together.
Okay.
So it's not a team in the sense that they work together. In the case of the organizational change programs, they are one team, but they are not working together in the sense that some of them will be looking at this, some of them will be looking at that, some of them will be looking at something else. In the personal development program, each individual has their own project.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not working together in that sense. So the set is there for the learning process. So
Okay.
the term set means the focus of the learning environment.
And they deliberately wanted to stay away from using group or team.
Absolutely, groups or teams, or yes, because they're not.
Yeah, yeah.
They are a learning environment. You could say a learning team, really, but set was the word that was chosen.
Okay, excellent. So that was the first component. Let's look at the second one that we were talking about.
Right. So the process. All action learning programs run on this 5-step process. They start with an introductory workshop, which can be from half a day to 3 weeks, depending on how much development you think the people need in order to be able to work effectively. So in one of the Dun Church programs, we ran a 3-week training program for the participants. This was a personal development program, but we actually, it was decided that we should train them in interpersonal skills. So it was all about problem solving and questioning and presenting and report writing and all these other things. So they were given these skills before they started because they need them on the way. But in normal programs, they learn on the way. So you spend half a day getting them going, and then you put the inputs in as you go along. The second phase is investigation and recommendation. So you have a project which says that we'd like you to look at X, Y, Z and come up with recommendations on what should be done about it. The key thing about the project is that it should be open-ended. So there isn't one right answer, like crossing the road, you take the zebra, or the speed limit's 50 kilometers an hour, that's what you do. That's the right answer. It's not necessarily what you do, but that's the right answer. So it's not like that. Open-ended problems have many different options, many different things you could do. So they must be, these projects must be open, and the investigation and recommendation phase is about investigating not only the problem from your point of view, but looking around for other people who are doing the same sort of thing and see what they're doing. The presentation and feedback, the individual or team, depending on the type of program, presents their findings and their recommendations. Clients can ask questions, but during the presentation and feedback session, the plenary, we don't recommend too much. Afterwards, teams meet with clients, they talk about it, they decide what the client would like them to implement. In the implementation phase, the team implements the recommendations that they've made. The two phases are different, and it's very important to recognize that the skills involved in investigation and recommendation are quite different from the skills involved in implementation. So programs where you only have investigation it's a soft option because you're only asking questions, getting information, and then deciding what to do about it. Implementation is the hard option because then you have to persuade people to do what you want them to do. And then you have the final review, which is normally a sort of half-day session where we talk about what we learned, what went well, what didn't go well, what we're going to do in the future. And all programs follow this structure.
George, another question in the chat box. It's about, is that the same set working on the investigation and recommendation as they do on the implementation, or can that be different?
Absolutely, they go right through.
Okay.
You recommend, you implement what you recommend.
So you have to live with your recommendation.
That's a key part of the learning process. Yes, you have to live with what you recommend.
Okay, so it's really about accountability.
Yes, it's about accountability.
And people need to know that when they get into this process, I guess.
They certainly do. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Number 3.
So now we look at set 3. 3 is the action learning set and the bits thereof. So if you look at the jolly smiling people at the top on the slide, these are the clients. The client is absolutely essential to this process because it's the client who agrees the project. It's the client who says, this is what I'd like you to do. And to be a client, you have to have three characteristics. You have to know about the problem, you have to care about the problem, and you have to be able to implement the solution. You cannot be a client unless you know, you care, and you can.
Mm-hmm.
The type of project, as I said earlier, is it must be open-ended, it must be practical, and it must be something that needs to be done. Participants. Who participates? Depends. Some programs, the participants volunteer. We run a session, we explain, people say, yes, I'd like to do that, or no, I wouldn't. Other programs, they can be nominated. So we might say to all of the middle managers, we'd like you to nominate somebody for this program and produce a project. It's open. And as far as the participant is concerned, this is a real opportunity to do something interesting, to learn about yourself, to develop and grow. Sponsor, I talked earlier about the difficulty that one can have, doesn't always have, but can have, when senior managers find their position is being questioned by more junior people and they don't like it. The sponsor is really the person who actually believes that the program is worth having and will pay for it. And you need a sponsor who's on your side, really. Somebody who actually believes that this thing can work and will add value to the organization. Not necessarily add value to all of the senior people, but to the organization. Then we have the coordinator. And this is particularly important with organizational change programs, where you could have 10, 15 sets working. You need somebody on site who is going to keep an eye on this for you, because you can't possibly control it on your own. So you have some external facilitators who go in and do bits and pieces, sit with sets and get information. You have the internal facilitation process, but you actually need a coordinator. Somebody who people can contact, who will check up on what's happening, and who will phone you if you're running it, as in my case, and say, this is happening, can you come, or everything is fine, or whatever. So the coordinator, particularly on organizational change programs, is an essential feature. Resources. You have resources in the set. So you have people who know things that others don't, and you can use them to provide short training programs, give advice, do coaching, or whatever. You can also have external resources, things like resource centers, where you have maybe videos and training materials and this sort of thing. You can use your local college of management as a resource. You could run your meetings there. You can use the staff who are specialists in certain areas to help. You need resources, and you need to be prepared to think about it and provide them. The facilitator, yes, you need a facilitator, and we will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And you need facilitators if you have more than one or two sets. And then the learning set, which is the little picture in the middle of the circle there. This is where we learn with and from each other. So this is where the learning takes place. Everything else takes place outside. So how does it work, Richard? How does it work?
Yeah, question, George. How many people are in a set? Is that a...
Good question. Well, it's an interesting thing. You need 5 or more, and not more than 10. In fact, 7 is a good number. Okay. If it's more than 7, it can take too long. If it's less than 5, there's not enough energy there. So yes, 7 is the ideal number.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on.
Right. So we're going on to how the set works. I've said here in personal development programs, the facilitator has 2 roles. It is slightly different in organizational development programs, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But in personal development programs, the facilitator is both, certainly at the start, the coordinator of the meetings and facilitates the learning, as he or she is the only one who knows how it works. So when the set first come together, the facilitator acts as coordinator. They welcome everybody, and then invite the participants one at a time to share their projects and to say what they propose to do in the first time period. Normally that will be 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm going to get information about this, I'm going to talk to my boss, etc. And the facilitator, or in his role as coordinator, or her role as coordinator, takes notes of what people say are their proposed actions. And these notes then become the agenda for the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very simple process. Every meeting, we talk about what you said you'd do, we look at what you did, we look at what went well, we look at what did not go so well and what you need to do about it, and we record it. We don't record what went well because you don't need the training. Because your development needs are the things that you don't do well.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can't persuade people to respond to what I need, then I need to learn how to influence people. If I'm not good at getting information, then I need to learn how to ask questions. If I don't know enough about finance to ask questions about finance, I need to learn. I need to get some knowledge about finance and how to do this. If I don't have the skills to do something that I need to be able to do in order to manage my project, I need to get those skills. And if I don't have the experience to go with that, then I need to get it. So as the project develops, we start with a technical project, we can say, which is how to, let's say, how to change the setup times on the machine from one day to one shift. Then that's technical and it's fine. But as I go along, it becomes a dual focus exercise because I then identify my learning needs, whether it be knowledge, skills, experience, or the way I behave. This is my interpersonal skills. So in the second meeting, I could well have two projects. I could have my technical project and my personal development project. Maybe a learning project. It may just be skills. So this is very, very simple. We run the meeting, you say what you did well, you talk about your proposed actions, and we use that for the next meeting. So it's a very, very easy thing to do. The things that have not gone well are the pointers to learning needs, and this leads to these secondary projects.
Excellent.
And then you develop AFIs based on what's necessary. So, sure. And yes, I was just going to say that the organizational change projects are very similar. They also go through the same process, mm-hmm. And the only difference really is that they are self-managed, and we provide training so that they can manage themselves. So they don't have external facilitators and coordinators. In fact, they rotate the role and do it themselves, and it works very well.
Okay.
So what are the strengths and weaknesses of action learning? Action learning is holistic, and this is what sets it apart from most other types of training or development. It works with knowledge, skill, experience and behavior of the whole person, thus allowing participants to identify particular aspects that they need to be working on and do something about it. Practical people, in our experience, do learn best with and from each other. A peer group environment, a set, encourages people to be open and encourages them to both listen to and share with each other. It's motivating because it's pulling learning through rather than pushing education in. It identifies real learning needs in practice, and it's far better than pushing through a syllabus. Empowered employees at all levels are our only hope for the future. No organisation which doesn't empower its employees really has an opportunity of remaining competitive. Implant programs really do deliver organisational change. They actually do work in terms of creating the cultures which are necessary to explore, to utilise the new behaviours. And action learning programs are very cost effective. Depending on the focus of projects, they can be cost neutral or value adding. What do I mean by that? If you give somebody a project to increase productivity by 10% in their work area, and they achieve that, that 10% will more than pay for the cost of training them. If you look at value adding, how do we actually increase the value of what we do by, let's say, 10%? If we're talking about a situation where we have some resource, let's say a service organisation, and we want to increase the value that these 6 or 8 or 10 people can add, and we can achieve that, then we can more than pay for the program. So it's possible with this method to have free training, and I've experienced it, of course.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And when you talk about the cost effectiveness, earlier when we talked about the type of programs, there were 3 categories that are actually very expensive because
Expensive, yes. And
because
they
the
are
people are off the job basically. But we're talking here.
They're off the job, and whilst they may be cost effective to the host organizations, they are not cost effective to the organizations that are paying for their training.
Yeah, I understand.
Because they don't actually put payback into their own organization.
Yeah, another question to do with you mentioned here. People ask about practical people. Does it mean it's only good for practical people, or can anybody participate?
Well, all people are practical, aren't they? When it comes down to the day-to-day work, it is about practice. It's not about theory. So if we took this is in its original form, this is a management process. So all managers are in practice managing. They are organizing, directing, and controlling the work of other people. So this is a practical process. It's not theoretical. You're saying to somebody, "I'm sorry, but you're not doing what I'd like you to produce, and I'd like us to sit and talk about how you can do that." This is a practical process.
Yep, I understand. Okay.
It's not theoretical.
No. So there's a shadow side to action learning?
Shadow side weakness. Well, yes, there is. Particularly, it can be difficult to sell because the lack of structure means there's an intangibility about it. If you send somebody to a local management college to do a diploma in something, then you know what you're getting for your money. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you're getting somebody coming out hopefully with a diploma. What learning transpired, what they actually learned, and how practical that is, how valuable that is a completely different question. But it can be difficult to sell because there are no syllabi, no examinations, no professors. It's difficult, or can be. You need enlightened people to sell it to, really. Mm-hmm. Some participants don't like action reflection learning because they don't like sharing, they don't like being open, they don't like being wrong, and they don't want to think that they are in a need to develop themselves. So autocrats in general don't like action learning. But it's not a problem. I mean, most of them will survive, they just don't like it. They survive because not to survive would be a blot on their career map. So they do survive, but they don't like it. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, with the rest of the work we did in Roche, they liked it. So I think depending on what sort of people you have, if you have people like research people, they like it because they like the process. But autocrats don't like it.
Yeah.
Some sponsoring managers don't like the empowerment aspects. We talked about that before, that some managers are very insecure and they need to be in charge and in control in order to feel comfortable. If they have a situation where, let's say, their people are into the way the job is going, or they're going off to meetings, particularly with maybe people at levels above the sponsoring manager, they don't like it. Mm-hmm. Because they feel threatened by it. So this is also, or can be, a problem. The process can be seen as time-consuming. This isn't true, of course. It isn't time-consuming. In fact, most action learning set meetings normally take place at lunchtime, so it's a sort of coffee and sandwiches in a couple of hours. So they aren't time-consuming, but people believe they are. You know, and I've said here, having people off the job for 4 hours a month can be seen as a problem. But even if it is 4 hours a month, most people don't work the 36 or 48 hours that they're on the job anyway. So it's not realistic. It's just nonsense, really. But people, managers can feel. I think they feel they've lost control. I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think we in the Roche program we had that experience.
We had one or two, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Participants who identify organisational issues that they are unable to change can become frustrated. This is very true. Uh, in the UK, we had a lot of interest in things like quality circles and this sort of thing, and a lot of people got involved, and it all started very well. But after about a year, 18 months, most programs failed because what the teams were finding was that the quality problems weren't really anything to do with the work areas. They were much more to do with the fact that managers didn't want to actually provide the facilities to underpin the tests necessary, to provide material that you could actually make the thing out of. So most of the time, the problems that were identified were really to do with management, not to do with working.
Mm-hmm.
So when the idea was embraced, I think management thought that it would be quite innocuous in the sense that it would be all problems to do with workers, but it turned out not to be so. And item 6 there, people can be frustrated if management fail to support the program. So if people spend, if you have a group of people who spend 3 months exploring something and come up with some recommendations which they think are viable, and then management says, oh, well, we're not going to bother with that, then you can get frustration, and people become very unhappy. And finally, it is easy to deny the value of the experience, to say it was only a program with a start, a middle, and end. And I think this is very true of a lot of training, that organizations have invested in the past in training, but when the training's finished, the sponsoring people, like the managers, really just want people to go back to being the way they were. They don't actually want them to have trained because of the program. And I think this has been historically a big problem with training programs.
I think it's
anyway.
It hasn't disappeared actually. I know
no, it hasn't disappeared, Richard,
of situations today where people go on training programs or even MBIs or MBAs, and they come back and they
yes.
of course have expectations, and actually
their expectations are not met. Did you enjoy your holiday?
Yeah, yes, right. Sad but true. Okay.
Yes,
last but not least, we're kind of up to the 1 hour. Summary from what we have been talking about.
Okay. Well, action learning is a simple concept which develops the whole person, and I think this is a very important point about action learning. It's also, and it isn't on the slide here, but I would also say that it can be a bit messy, and you have to accept that when you're talking about developing people, you can come up with all sorts of interesting things, but in my experience, people commit and they do achieve, and it does work.
Yeah.
It creates real change in both individuals and in organizations. There is residual value. I've run a number of programs over the years where the organization has continued with the program, often in a slightly different way, but the people who have participated in the previous program volunteer to come in as facilitators, as coordinators, as support, as advisors. So it can work, it does work, and there is residual value there if you want to use it. It is cost effective. I mean, they're not expensive. These programs aren't expensive anyway. And depending on the focus of the projects, they can be self-funding, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be. So if you take an own job program, you give each participant a project which will at least earn the fee, what it will cost to actually sponsor him. And there's no problem with doing that. And I suppose finally that what we've really been talking about here is that action learning originally was focused on developing management talent. And that's really what it's designed for. However, it can equally well be used to develop any specialist talents. So if you want to develop, let's say, a finance manager or director, somebody in finance who you'd like to groom to be a departmental manager, then you can use action learning to do that. So you can use development projects just as well as you can use management projects. It's easily done. All you need to do is create a project which is relevant to the needs of the individual and will make a return for you. I rest my case.
Thank you very much.
Work.
Yeah. Thanks, George. I think you make a good point there about because what we have been talking about is wickedly effective talent developers, and so people were asking, okay, how do we develop talent with this process? And I think you made that very clear. It's all about talent, although action learning was designed or developed to have the management talent developed. And in the program that we had with Roche, we also saw that people did all kinds of projects, and definitely not only management talent to move ahead in their, let's say, in their career, to understand how they can do things differently and become more effective in what they do.
Yes, I agree.
Question and answers. Okay, who has any questions for George at this point in time? Yeah, there's a question, George, about what got you interested in action learning.
Well, yes, I was I was teaching management at the time, using a sort of action learning approach, case studies, simulations, this sort of stuff, and focusing really on, as I think I said earlier, on a sort of participative approach to management. And one day I met one of my best clients who sponsored people regularly for my programs, and he said to me, George, he said, I'm sorry, but I can't send any more people to you for training because the cost is too high. And I said, I'm very sorry. I didn't think, I haven't put my fees up for 2 years. I said, no, he said, it's not the fees. He said, it's the fact that I've just done a survey of the people I've sent on your training programs. And he said, some of our very best people, he said, have left. So I said, oh dear. I said, yes. He said, it's not exactly your fault. He said, but he said our management team is more or less ex-military, and we don't dig participation. He said we don't. So he said, and they felt that it was they didn't want to stay any longer because they couldn't manage in the way they would like. So I tested this. I interviewed a number of people and found that it was true that the organisations in what was then the GEC Marconi Group weren't particularly interested in better management. They just wanted better autocrats. So when I met Reg and chatted with him, I thought to myself, here's an ideal opportunity. This is a vehicle that I could use to change organizational cultures. So that's what got me interested in action learning. And then I worked with Reg at Dunchurch, learned the tricks of the trade, as you might say. And then in 1980, when we set up ALA International, I started with implant programs. And the first one was at Motorola, and it worked absolutely perfectly, because Motorola in those days was a very go-ahead organization which believed in listening to its people. So it was okay. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, so the whole idea of this participative management and getting people involved, we talk nowadays about the wisdom of the team. It fits very well with actually the action learning process.
Yes, it definitely does.
Excellent. And one more question, and then we have to kind of start moving on.
Okay.
You mentioned facilitator. So what does it take to be trained as a facilitator?
Well, what does it take? Now we have another webinar on that, don't we? How to be trained as a facilitator. Mm-hmm. Facilitation is a natural process, and most people on the planet have at one time or another either sought facilitation for change from somebody else, or because also somebody has sought facilitation from them in order to change. So it is a natural process. It's something that we do often or most of the time without knowing that we're doing it. Mm-hmm. So if somebody comes up to you and says, how are you, George, etc., and you say, well, what about a beer? And yes, well, and when we're having a beer, you say, well, you had a little bit of a problem with so-and-so. Can you tell me what happened? This is a facilitation process. But this person is pulling what they want from me or you or whoever it is, rather than it being formal, where I'm asking you questions. But so the process is natural, and we all have some facility for it. If you're already involved in some sort of training and development process, you are probably already facilitating. You will be already facilitating, so you wouldn't need to do any more. We do have a training program for facilitation, and there are programs on the market. But if you read our book, Facilitated Learning, there is a questionnaire in there where you could profile yourself and see whether you need training or whether you already have the expertise.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's a good segue in what we want to talk about next for all those people who are now interested in getting engaged with action learning. First, to point out that obviously we promised you that you will get a copy of the Applications of Action Learning book from George. So you will find that in the membership site. After today, tomorrow, we will upload the webinar and the documents to the membership site, and you will get an email with the how you can log on. So that's the thing that's going to be next for you. And what we also put together is actually a special offer. George already talked about it. In the past hour, we've been really talking about understanding action learning, how it can be applied in what context. And we would like to ask, would you agree it's been time that we really spent well? And secondly, you've also realized once we start talking about it, there are more dimensions to action learning that meets the eye immediately, and we can't cover everything. That's clear. At the same time, you have a good impression of what it can mean in your context. We put a special offer together. George, you have been in business for such a long time. If you would give an estimate about how many action learning programs have you run, a rough estimate, do you have an idea? And in how many countries?
Well, yes. If we say 25 years and probably 10 a year, 250.
And was that all in Europe? Was it elsewhere?
No, all over the world. Places like Mexico and Thailand and Japan. Where else? In Europe, it's all over Europe: France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Russia, Bangladesh. Where else?
Yeah, I think the point is made. Fast experience.
I was just trying to think of other. Yes, I mean yes, all over really.
Yeah.
Cuba.
And we were looking
Bulgaria.
Look at that. And so what we've put together is based on the experience that George has, a series of webinars, and we want to give you an offer for a very special deal that we put together. And we call it George Bolden's 4 Action Learning Webinars and ebook package. And in essence, it has these components, and I'll quickly walk you through it. I realized we're running over of the hour that we talked about, so we'll get this through quickly. Throughout these modules, you'll really get a crystal clear explanation of what action learning is and how it really works in any context. The first webinar, I should say, is the nature and process of change. It actually goes into the complexities of change and how you can leverage to initiate organizational change, how you can use action learning for that. The second one is action learning in personal development. It really enables you to design your personal development programs. And the third one is empowering organizational change. Here you really know how to initiate that organizational change, how to initiate the organizational change program, and you actually leverage, like we already heard today, the talent development in multifunctional teams. And the last webinar is about facilitation, the facilitated learning. It goes in depth about what the facilitation of action learning programs means, and comes with practical tools. And obviously you go like, okay, how do I do that within 1 hour, and what else is there? Well, we have a series of bonuses that belong to this offer, and it's in essence the 4 books that George wrote relevant for these 4 webinars. So the first is the On Job Action Learning bonus, a book that actually goes into how you create basically your own programs. We already talked about that. The second one is related around George's book Change, that you can also buy at Amazon, by the way, and it comes with its own resources membership site, which is really for any individual who wants to make a change in their lives, and like the title says, Gateway to a New Life, you really want to make a change. This is a very hands-on, tangible workbook that will help you through any change process that's for you individually important. The third bonus that we have is empowering organizational change. This is George's experience of the implant action learning, documented, and you heard how vast George's experience has been. So it's really from tangible projects and programs that have run all over the world, condensed into a recipe for doing that. And the last one we talked about it. This is the guidebook, the handbook about facilitated learning. Gives you practical tools, what to use in what circumstances when you're going through the process of facilitating action learning sets. What else do we have? You will get access to the membership site that we have for this, and you will find the materials there, like the materials of this webinar. You will find the recording of the 4 webinars that we're going to do, the MP3 files, so that you can actually listen to them while you're on the road, and access to the frequently asked questions. And obviously, we kind of rack it all up and say, well, you already get $560 of great products completely free when you sign up for these 4 webinars. When I summarize that, and we put a value to what the investment would be. Well, if you really go through these 4 webinars, you really understand how action learning works and how you can make it work. And that's clearly, an underestimate. For $1,000, you don't get that anywhere. And then the webinar for modules, which last around an hour to 1.5 hours, we'll offer those after this webinar for $97 each. So together already over a $400 value. What you're also getting is 4 PDF books, and you get access to the recording we talked about. You will get the MP3s, and another service that we have is in the membership area, there will be a frequently asked questions. You can actually put new questions in, and we will monitor that and put answers there, so that it's built over time for the participants to have a resource for questions and answers. So together it's quite a value. We rack it up here to $1,468, and what we're doing today is we're offering it specially for you for $197. So all 4 webinars, the 4 books, everything for $197. And so now you have 2 choices. Obviously, the first option is you do nothing and you not take any action, and which is totally risk-free, or you actually make this small investment today, and compared to all the value you get, it's actually just a very small investment. And if it then works, great. If not, then you can simply ask for your money back, because we give you a 60-day guarantee. So if you sign up today and you don't like it for any reason, and we don't care whether it's 59 days or 23 hours and 59 minutes, you just let us know and we'll give you your money back. So how do you get started with this offer? You can see here the link on the screen, HTTPS, and I'll copy that in. So I'll have to do that in the chat box so that you can actually click on the link and go there to. So.
Yeah, he's just summarizing really.
I can still hear you, George. Can you mute the microphone? So George was kind of offline and thought he was offline, but he's still with us. And so that's how you can get started. And the real question for you at the moment is, of course, is it worth gambling a few minutes of your time to check this out? Yeah. Even if it does half of what we've claimed today on this webinar, I think it fully pays for itself. You can see that. And you will have a resource for life, because it will be there forever, and each time that you might be interested to pick it up again and start implementing the program, you have access to the resource. So again, the link is in the chat box. Click on the link and you can sign up for the program. That's what you can do now. The link is there, and go ahead and sign up for the program. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box, and then we can ask you for what is happening. Any questions? No, we don't have any questions. We have people looking at the links, so that's really good. And we also don't want to leave it too much time. So if you don't have any questions anymore, we definitely want to close the session. Sorry that we overran a bit, and we hope that you had great value out of the program. We definitely enjoyed it a lot. George, last words from you, from your side?
Yes, I am still here, and I'm saying goodbye and thank you for joining us.
Same from me, from Richard de Laat. We're signing off. Hope to see you soon on our next webinars.